Hey guys, this is Elation PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Green Through by Another Fucking Robin. This is Chapter 20. Peter wakes up slowly, completely at ease on the armchair under his plastic tarp. Actually feeling refreshed, replenished, and awake, instead of waking up more hungry, angry, and exhausted than when he fell asleep. Which is a first, well, since he came to Gotham. His dreams flutter away when he thinks of it, but he has a new resolve condensed in his gut, and an energy prickling under his skin. Today, he's going out as Spider-Man. Peter sneaks through Gotham streets in the waxing light of morning. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the sky is preemptively lightening, cycling through various shades of desaturated purple. Peter thinks the moon would still be visible if it weren't for Gotham's permanent cloud cover. It doesn't matter either way, the sky isn't providing much actual light. Neither are the lampposts, flickering and dull, barely lighting the faces of the gang members who congregate under them. Peter relies on his heightened vision and his other senses to navigate. He remembers the first time he used his UV vision. He thought he was dying. It was odd. It was 2 days, maybe 3 after the infamous Oscorp trip. He was finally stable, no longer writhing in pain and sweating bullets. He had opened his eyes to his room, darkened because he'd begged Aunt May to shut off the lights, because the humming and burrowing into his skull and the beams were like knives in his eyes. But when he'd opened his eyes, the room wasn't dark at all. There were shafts, pillars of light coming under his door, through his curtains, even though it was well into the night. He thought he was going insane and refused to open his eyes for 3 hours, hiding under blankets. He'd come to accept his powers, UV vision included, and has started being quite grateful for them. The colors are as beautiful as they are hard to describe, because how do you describe a color to someone who's never seen it before? It's colder. Like how hot pink is. Ironically, colder than the pink color of flushed cheeks and cold fingers. In that way, you can describe yellow as a cold orange, which isn't right, but not exactly wrong either. This is like that. Like even colder purples and blues, but there are other colors too. Colors that don't have any sort of resemblance to any visible colors, which is incredibly frustrating. The best way he can think to describe them is that in the same way that purple is halfway between blue and red, what he sees is halfway between blue and orange. But Peter, you say, mixing blue and orange is just brown. To you, Peter says, can you see the ultraviolet spectrum? No? So shut up. Either way, Peter can see that now, even more defined. Ultraviolet is a very useful spectrum to be able to see into. For one, flowers look cool as shit now. Did you know that dandelions have a big old pinkish-greenish circle in the middle? Well, they do. Most flowers actually have spots and markings that humans can't see, visible for bees and other pollinators. People have markings too, not for pollination, but still there. Concentrated on the torso and legs, so Peter only really sees them in the summer. He remembers going to the beach with May and seeing the swirling marbled lines on the bodies of beachgoers. From what he's seen, they generally seem to converge, or at least concentrate on the spine and the center line of the torso, and swirl aimlessly around arms and legs. He first noticed when changing one morning, and caught his own reflection in his mirror. Why did he even have a mirror in his room, you may ask? The answer is 50% self-flagellation, and 50% for making muscles at himself on the rare good day. And he saw that his forearms had stripes, alternating bands to dark and light. He'd gawked at himself for a while in the mirror, which is usually a bad thing, but not this time. Turns out he has invisible stripes on his forearms and forelegs. A dark splotch on his sternum to his belly button, cool lines of concentric circles from his shoulder blades down towards his pelvis, and a cool hourglass-like symbol above his tailbone. He deduced that all his markings were from the various spider genes he has running around his DNA. The hourglass from Black Widow, the circles from a Red Widow, the stripes on his arms and legs from some sort of neoscota. His best bet is Neoscota domilicorum, but it's anyone's guess. And the mark on his chest is too common to accurately extrapolate a species. He doesn't know anyone else had markings, albeit wildly different from his own, being bitten in autumn when everyone else was layered in scarves and coats and gloves, until the beach day with May. Though UV vision has revealed many such secrets to him, it is probably most useful at night. You see, because UV has less penetrative abilities than visible light, due to its shorter wavelength, it seems to kind of settle and reflect off of surfaces rather than being absorbed into them. It gives the world a bluish vignette and outlines objects with a slight glow. Anyway, long story short, With his cool eyes, Peter's able to navigate the pitch streets and avoid roaming gang members with such accuracy that he arrives at his destination much quicker than even a native Gothamite. The train station is run down, empty, but this, Peter found, is normal. That was a real shock coming from New York when he first took the train on his first day of school. Gotham's train station is just kind of empty, like it's holding its breath. The fluorescent lights flicker over unused benches, and there's mounds of gum on the underside of seats and tables, but hardly any people. Sure, there are homeless people slumbering in corners, and one or two middle-aged commuters, but other than that, practically abandoned. And it's been like this every time he's gotten on or off the train. At first it was novel, a train where he wasn't squished between strangers and forced to practically taste their BO. Sign him up. But by the ride back, the ad worn off and left him with an odd Twilight Zone feeling. He'd meant to ask Barbara about it, but he hadn't gotten the chance to visit the library since he started school, so he asked Duke. Apparently, the train station is regularly targeted by rogues, and about a week before Peter arrived, Two-Face had blown up some important bridge over Gotham River, and the public is giving it a month's grace period for the city to get its shit together enough to fix it so they can commute regularly again. It's terrifying that there's a public consensus on how long to wait before taking the train after a terror bombing, but that's the reason he's at the train station at this ungodly hour. Spider-Man is needed, and, according to Danny, Spider-Man needs webs. So Peter does the very legal and respectable thing of hopping the turnstile and sticking onto the back of the first train he sees heading southbound. Not really very Spider-Man-ly of him, but in his 3 years of being a vigilante, Peter's learned to tell the difference between crime and deviance. It won't keep him up at night. Peter emerges from the station in Coventry to a much emptier street than the one he left back in the Bowery, which is to be expected. Sure, walking the Bowery alone at night is an invitation to violent crime. Walking Crime Alley is a death sentence. But despite that, it has a certain life that the rest of Gotham somewhat lacks at this time in the morning. Children huddled under lampposts trying to cram their homework, the homeless strewn around fires and silently keeping guard for each other, working girls walking arm in arm with frankly ginormous tasers to fend off those who hide in the dark. Coventry, by comparison, is deserted. In fact, Peter half expects a tumbleweed to blow across the street simply to illustrate his point. This works to Peter's advantage, though, allowing him to creep through empty streets and vault the tall fence surrounding Gotham Prep unnoticed. He slinks into the campus undetected. The school is just as desolate as the streets outside, but Peter isn't taking any chances. Because of this, Peter is hyper-aware of the motion sensors and cameras he stakes to the corners, making slow, tentative movements in order to avoid them. It's effective but slow-going, traversing slowly through the shadows. He quickly grows restless and starts thinking of alternatives when he spots a grate on the ceiling and smiles. Peter loves vents. He crawls over and lifts the cover before slotting himself inside and closing it behind him. The vents are larger and cleaner than he'd have thought, having experience with these in Midtown High. But then again, Gotham has quite a few rogues who utilize deadly gases, so Gothamites probably would have better vent maintenance habits than New Yorkers. Or maybe it's a multiverse thing. Who knows? Either way, this method of transport is much better. He can crawl way faster without the worry of being caught in any cameras. He starts letting himself fall into the urges that he usually suppresses, letting his body bend in ways it really shouldn't. The Avengers. What happened to the hallucinations? Oh well, disembodied heroes' voices in his head isn't the weirdest thing he's ever experienced. Make various taken aback noises as he speed crawls through the ventilation. Horror movie, Sam whispers to Bucky. Peter, please be careful, that looks painful, Wanda suggests. Don't worry, guys, he tries to reassure them. My joints go way further than this. See? He twists his shoulder so that it's almost sitting squarely on top of his spine. This does not seem to reassure them. Well, if the gagging noises are anything to go by. Oh well, he tried. After about 2 minutes of crawling through vents in the empty science block, Peter passes over a conveniently placed giant grate. He stops over the grill, entire body weight on his well-placed fingertips and toes. It's okay, though. Peter isn't heavy. He's lacking in a bunch of muscles and approximately 6% of his bone mass, which doesn't sound like much until you realize that it's the same as missing just under half of his femur. Oh, and his body fat is drastically lower than it has been for the majority of his life. That's not a good thing, Parker. What he's trying to say is that he's skinny and light and soundless. He peers through the slits and into the darkness below, surprised to see that he can actually see the room from this vantage point. As Wade would say, "What the shitballs? This event isn't plot convenient at all. Fuck you, author." Before raising 2 middle fingers to the sky, Peter is not going to flip off Wade's hallucination god. He is, however, slightly miffed. He pries the vent open from the surrounding floor and lowers his head into the space below. It's a cage? A fish tank? No, those do not have small doors or vents or smell faintly like carbon monoxide. Oh, this is a fume box. He retracts his head and smiles. Fume boxes live in labs, which is just what he's been looking for. Peter lowers himself, feet first this time, into the glass cube, singing the Mission Impossible theme and moving vertically downward, slower and more drastically than strictly necessary. Once his lower half is firmly inside the box, it starts to seem like he won't fit. This notion would be correct if Peter were anyone but himself, as previously mentioned. He is severely lacking in the bone department. He lets his torso fall down after his pelvis, utilizing his full range of movement, conforming to the small space like a liquid or a cat. He swivels so that he's facing the right side of the box and presses the pads of his fingers to the glass, coaxing the door open. He spills out onto the floor before jumping to his feet and clapping his hands together as he surveys the room. It's a stereotypical high school lab, wooden tables, though these ones aren't graffitied to within an inch of their lives like those at Midtown. Stools with 0 back support, and yes, the holy grail, the chemical cabinet. Both Shuri and Dr. Richards are taken aback that this is the standard for science labs, even in schools as prestigious as Midtown or Gotham Academy. He ignores them, letting his school backpack fall to the floor before he bounds over and flings the door open. Both hinges are intact. He's improving. He has to physically remind himself not to hug or snuggle a conical flask or nitric acid. Chemicals aren't stored all that meticulously in unprofessional environments. He hears Dr. Richards whisper about eye protection and Shuri mutter about the barbaric West and improper facilities. He replaces the acid back on the shelf and glances at the clock. It's 4:47 a.m. School starts at 8. He has 4, well, closer to 3 hours to synthesize as much web fluid as he can. First, he digs into his pockets and pulls out a pair of socks, and opens them to reveal his bullet casings. Jangling metal isn't conducive to stealth. He dumps them onto the side with a sound like a crashing wave. Second, he assembles all the reactants he needs. He nabs a small jar of white powder with a hopefully correct label that marks it as potassium carbonate, 2 flasks of methanol, and a tiny jar or the clear salicylic acid. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have a stock of toluene or ethanol acetate, or his previous carbon tetrachloride, but that is heavily illegal in his home universe, so he knows how to make his own, and anticipated having to do that here. So to retrieve his missing babies, he sets off on a quest to the art room. He decides to sneak through the vents again, one on the wall this time, not through the fume box, because science labs are always left locked, and busting the door down would make his previous attempts at stealth pointless. Plus, a broken-in science lab could cause the school to take stock of their chemicals and realize that there is a significant amount missing. So vents it is. Not like he's complaining. The vents are comfy. Sue him. He drops to a crouch over an art table, sending a pot full of paintbrushes flying before he manages to catch it, without sending them clattering all over the floor. Thank you, reflexes. Gingerly, he places them back where they were and hops off the table. The layout of the room is unfamiliar to him, not only because he's never been in this particular room before, but because even in his homeworld, he never spent much time in the art rooms. Harry flunked off school as much as he could, but when he was around, he enjoyed hanging out with Peter in the science labs. Gwen, and later Hobie, spent as much time as they could in the band room, on the drums and electric guitar respectively, so he's vaguely aware of what stuff goes together in there. But with his enhanced hearing and vibrational senses, he tended to steer clear of their jam sessions, opting instead to listen from afar and ask Gwen to record them so he could play it back later at a lower volume. Gwen always appreciated that he tried so hard to listen to her music, even though he had a tendency to become easily overwhelmed by his sensory input. A trait that he's always had and just got dialed to 1,000 post-bite. Hobie, being his only friend at school who knows his identity due to his role as a vigilante hornet, understood his aversion to their blaring speakers and squealing tones and has always vouched for him, which he is incredibly grateful for. Despite all that, though, Peter loves hearing their music. They play a mean duet, and he doesn't want to miss it. or make them think he doesn't care. Ned spends his time in the computer labs or at the decathlon meets, where he and Peter spend hours geeking out. After he revealed his identity to Hobie, he dropped by their coding sessions sometimes, claiming that he wanted to learn code to dismantle capitalism and overthrow fascists once and for all, even though Peter knew that he built his own supersuit and definitely knows how to code. But it got Ned happy ramble info dumping, which is always welcome. His only friend who was interested in art was MJ, who preferred to draw from life in public, and didn't ever go out of her way to be in an art classroom outside of art lessons. To cut a long and unnecessary ramble short, Peter has no clue where to begin his search. Thankfully, the universe has decided to give him a slight respite from his relentless bad luck, because everything is mercifully labeled. It takes him 3 short minutes to locate the bottle of paint thinner he needs and a handful of pencils. He feels slightly guilty about poaching their supplies, but they won't miss pencils, right? It takes him 15 more minutes to get back to the science lab because crawling with a bottle full of chemicals in one hand and about 30 pencils distributed across both pockets, which kept unhelpfully falling out and rolling away, isn't the best for speed, no matter how hilarious it seems to be for the years in his head. He drops back into the lab on light feet and deposits his loot besides his other chemicals and bullet casings before searching the room top to bottom for the right equipment. He grabs some hydrochloric acid and gathers a Bunsen burner, along with a tripod, heat-proof mat, and some wire gauze from a cupboard by the front of the room. Then a barrette, Liebherr condenser, and fractioning column, and various flasks from a glassware cabinet. 2 electrodes, a clamp, and a clamp stand from the back of the room, and a power pack from the literal last drawer he looked in. He places it all on the table opposite where all his supplies are laid out and starts setting it all up. After a couple of minutes, he has a functioning Bunsen burner set up on the safety yellow flame, as well as a decent fractional distillation station, rhyming, and an electrolysis setup. Should he be responsible and do each reaction separately? Nah, who's he kidding? He's way too impatient. He quickly deposits the hydrochloric acid into a beaker for electrolysis, making sure that his test tube bung is secure and he won't die of chlorine gas poisoning. Then he uses his barrette to add his stolen paint thinner to his round bottom flask to be fractionally distilled into toluene and ethyl acetate. Then he starts breaking apart the fantasy art pencils and ripping off the wood and just leaving graphite. He's just compressing the graphite into pure carbon between his palms when he hears another heartbeat on campus. Crap. He glances at the clock on the wall and sees the time, 7:25 a.m. Double crap. He looks over to his workstation and sees the electrolysis is all done, but the distillation isn't halfway finished. Crap. Crappity crap crap. He quickly sweeps the half-carbon, half-graphite lumps and the wood chips into his backpack. Then he stares at the electrolysis experiment and out the door, then back again a few times while waving his hands around in distress. What the fuck is he supposed to do with a test tube full of poison gas? Why the fuck did he make poison gas? I didn't mean to, he mentally screams at them, waving the backpack around. I meant it to bond to the carbon. I was supposed to make carbon tetrachloride, not chlorine gas. He glances back and forth a few times, wearing his lip, before deciding, fuck it. He dismantles the setup and places all the pieces on the table separately, and holds the chemical weapon he accidentally created gingerly at arm's length. He runs to the teacher's storage cupboard, finds a glue stick, and guts said glue stick and tosses the core into the trash. He replaces the core with his test tube. He then hides the glue stick inside a box of paper clips and tucks that away on the top shelf, right at the back. He had to wall crawl to get up there, to the empty top shelf. He hopes the height will be enough to keep it untouched. He backs away from the shelf slowly, giving a glare that says, "Stay there," before rushing back to the main lab. He similarly dismantles the fractional distillation station and makes several more trips to the teacher's cupboard to stash the various other chemicals he's made safely out of reach from prying hands, and replaces all the equipment where he found it. Then he shoves the bullet casings into the front pocket of his backpack and glances anxiously at the clock. At this point, it's 7:40 a.m., and the school is half full of heartbeats, teachers preparing lessons for the day. He scans the room a final time for any signs of his presence, and when he finds none, he slings his backpack over his shoulder and scampers up the wall back into the vents. Not a minute passes before he hears keys jingling in the lock of the room he was just in and footsteps enter. That was a close call. Too close. What were you thinking? Did he seriously forget that teachers arrive at school earlier than students? His silence tells them everything they need to know. He hears multiple facepalm echoes through his skull. For such a smart kid, you really are a dumbass. Amen. I hate you guys, he grumbles under his breath as he crawls through the ventilation. He drops into a street around the corner from school after roof hopping to distance himself from the scene of the crime. He's about to empty his backpack of the wood chips when two voices that he knows catch his attention. And, in a familiar twist of luck, they headed right for him. Everything is fine. You didn't just stash a vial of poison gas in his school cupboard. Everything is fine. Just act casual. Alright guys, now is the end of chapter 20 of Green Through and Through by Another Fucking Robin. I hope you guys liked it and I'll see you next chapter.